is up, y'all? Happy weekend. I would love to say that I am just taking a quick break from packing to do this podcast, but that is not the case. I've actually done nothing so far this morning except go to the gym and then take a nap. So it's fine though. It's fine. Everything's fine. I just really feel like I had to rest up for this episode. You know what I mean? It's an important one though. It's important to me. So I know I've talked about cultural identity a good amount on this podcast so far. I mean, like I mentioned in the absolute very beginning, this is a topic and really a concept that I'm just very interested in. And now that Daniel and I are married, I'm obviously much more attracted to it because it's more personal, it's more real, right? I'm not just arbitrarily talking about avoiding whitewashing as a concept anymore, whereas like a theoretical construct, it's become something like I do feel the need to speak out on now when I hear those quote unquote well-intentioned comments or questions based on unconscious bias, because now I'm not just talking about it in theory. I'm actively saying, hey, don't erase my husband's cultural identity. You know, it's real, right? It's not just, hey, as a white girl, I don't think you should say that. Now it's, no, you won't say comments like that about or around my husband. And especially since we started getting serious and we started talking about kids, because now it's not just about supporting or defending my husband, but now I'm considering the type of environment that I want my child to grow up in. I'm not going to let my kid get bullied if I can help it for bringing kimchi to school for lunch or any of those shenanigans, especially from my family, if I can help it. And not going to lie, the past 5-6 months or so have been pretty quiet in that sense. Nothing really was happening that was getting me all fired up, which is a good thing, right? Maybe it seems like maybe it's because we're growing. Maybe we're moving past some of this stuff overall as a community. Maybe it's just the people I'm surrounded by are beyond some of that now, which is a good thing, right? But alas, something has happened lately that spurred yet another tangent from me. So that's what I want to talk through in this episode. And it's so funny because it's like I've been seeing a lot of social media clips about how you never realize how many people you hate until you start trying to name a kid. And ain't that the truth, right? But honestly, it is a big task to name your child, because I think personally that your name is a huge part of your identity. And in a way, it does shape who you are. Like, do I think it's as intense as, oh, this is a Chad or a Karen as a personality type? If they're named something sweet and mellow, do they become sweet and mellow? Or do they grow up to become this personality type that we have named? I don't think it's that extreme necessarily, but I do think that somebody's name is very critical to their identity, and especially with ethnicities other than white people. I think that's a huge part of them holding on to their culture and their identity. And that's why I feel so bad when people have to change their name or only go by easy nicknames because that's the only way people can pronounce their name correctly. Or the other thing we see a lot statistically is people will choose to introduce themselves as a whiter sounding name to avoid any unconscious bias in a blind date scenario or in a job interview, etc., etc. Sometimes even in the academic realm too. I've read a lot of studies for grad school and stuff about how some kids would go by a white sounding name instead of their ethnic name because when the teachers were grading their assignments, they didn't want them to have that bias already in their head, especially with writing, especially with like academic application acceptance committees. They'll remove the names of the applicants and only give them their personal statements and their writing essays. And that way it'll just say applicant A, applicant B, applicant C. That way there's no bias from the application committee when they're reading some of these. So it's insane. I mean, personally, I think that's so sad because they're having to sacrifice a big chunk of their identity and their culture in order to fit in or to avoid being bullied or just to be given a fair chance. And that's a shame. I don't think it should have to be like that. And so Daniel and I have always said from day one, right, that we would give our kids Korean middle names. That's just that's always been not expectation, but that's just always been what it's going to be. And now, for the first names, I personally didn't want anything super basic or super common. I wanted something unique, but also with that, I didn't want a common name with a unique spelling. I didn't want a name that people would never be able to spell correctly or anything that people would read and be like, I have no idea where to even start with this pronunciation. And I didn't want a crazy off-the-wall name that no one's ever heard of before. So, saying that out loud, I realize that sounds very, very picky and fussy, but it is what it is, okay? Those are just my personal preferences. So, now that we've got the backstory laid out, here's where we get to the recent shenanigans that got me all fired up. So, we're 5 months out from baby Kimchi's debut appearance, right? It's going to be here before you know it. Very, very soon. I'm almost at the halfway point, which is crazy to me. I have a month before I'm at the halfway point. It's so bizarre. But anyway, we're getting definitely more serious about the name selections. And unfortunately, tip for the others, I've learned the hard way that maybe we shouldn't be so open about what our name choices are with others. Maybe we keep it a little bit closer to our chests because not everyone is as open and supportive of our thoughts as we want them to be, unfortunately. And also, let me add this preface because I think it's important going into this story. I'm sharing this story and this experience with you all because I think it's important. I think it's something we can all learn from. I'm not just complaining or trash talking people. So just keep that in mind. I trust y'all with my inner thoughts and my true beliefs. I have gotten pretty vulnerable a few times in this podcast. So I'm hoping y'all take this for what it is. And yeah, okay, here we go. Story time. So we tell my family that we're having a little girl. Yay. And it was a pretty underwhelming response from my parents, which is fine. It didn't seem to be a big deal either way. They just couldn't care less either way. Which is good in theory, right? Because I definitely would have been mad if they were like, it's not a boy, we don't want it. Or vice versa. You know what I mean? So I'm not complaining there, I promise. Could have been much worse, right? So now, with that information out there, we started getting the questions of what names we're thinking of. And I told them, which was my first mistake. And there's one name in particular that, I've had on my list, top of my list, since we started trying for a kid. So last year, a year and a half ago, technically. And it's after a very close friend that did a lot for me over the years. She's had a huge influence on me, and I would just be so happy if my daughter grew up to be half as much of a woman as she is. And now also to add on to this, I also just like the name. I think it's cute. It checks all the boxes I wanted. It's not difficult to pronounce or spell. It's not super common, but definitely known as a name. It's not like Twig or something like that. The Z9 X5 3Y Elon Musk type names that are just passwords, right? And so I just like the name, right? It has adorable nickname possibilities. There's no bad nicknames or teasing aspect that we can think of, because we have been considering that, like, hey, this name's cute, but what can kids call her that's not so cute? You know what I mean? Just those like awful puns. Like for a little bit, I was like, I like Isabella. And then Daniel said, and I was like, yeah, we could call her Izzy. That's really cute. And Daniel goes, oh, Izzy Jizzy. And I'm like, well, now that name is out. Thank you very much. And also, it flows so well, the name I picked, not Isabella. It flows so well with Kim as a last name. And also, Short answer, that should be enough. I just like the name. And honestly, in my opinion, maybe this is me being too spicy, but that should be all that matters. If we like it, if we like the name, there we go. Even if the person was a random coworker or someone I wasn't even a huge fan of that had this name, I still like the name. We still like it. And that should be it, in my opinion. So anyway, I told this somebody that's significant in my family, I'll just say that. And I was like, hey, we're very strongly considering this name for all of the above reasons. And it was not received well. They passive aggressively said it sounded too foreign, as if that's a bad thing. They did not like it. Not one bit. And I'm not gonna lie, I got a little bit prickly at this because potential baby names are surprisingly very personal. And it's kind of hard to explain. I did not think it would be like this, but if someone says, don't name your kid that, that's a bad choice, it's kind of received as you're making the wrong choice about your child and your feelings on your child's identity are wrong. I don't know. I know it sounds dramatic and it's, like I said, it's hard to explain, but any other parents out there, maybe you felt the same. Maybe I'm just overly dramatic right now because I'm pregnant. Either way, I am now a huge proponent of if someone tells me the name choices of their kids, even if I think it's a dumb or an ugly name, I'm not going to say that. I'm going to smile and say, wow, that's cute. Aw, adorable. Because that's not my kid. I don't know the significant backstory, if there is one, and that's their personal choice on their kid. They're excited about it, they like it, and it's kind of sucky to rain on their parade like that. And like I said, words are failing me right now on describing what it feels like exactly, but I was very disappointed and discouraged. I felt just unsupported. It's like when you're really excited about something or a hobby and you're trying to share that excitement with others and they either don't listen to you at all or they make fun of it for being lame or whatever the case may be. It's that type of feeling. And so that was a response I got on the first name, right? It's a great start. And the whole, it sounds too foreign, that was just not a good sign that I was stuck on. So now we get to the middle name. And I knew this wouldn't be received well. But I also figured I should give them a heads up so that way they weren't completely shocked. They weren't blindsided. They could have 5 months to act right and accept it. And so the middle name got brought up and I told this significant family member that we were picking a Korean name, but we weren't sure exactly what yet, but it would be a Korean name. And that was definitely not received well. It was the most underdeveloped, oh, okay, response possible that we got from them. But it was after work and I was tired and I felt myself being a bit defensive already after the absolute shutdown of the still number one name we want. I was kind of on edge, okay? And I didn't want to be too combative, so the conversation kind of just ended there. And then the next day, this significant person texted me and was like, what about all these very white name options? And how about this? And how about that? And don't you think this is pretty? And, what about Elizabeth as the middle name? And doesn't that sound so nice? Very much a passive-aggressive move to be like, hey, screw your choices. How about these that I like better? One, as if this was up for debate. And two, as if this was a joint naming initiative between the two of us and not between me and Daniel. And I was busy at work. Already, I was overstimulated, right? And I was honestly feeling feisty. I read that and I was like ready to fight. And I was like, nope, let me put my phone down. This is not the time. I was ready to argue. Just go in guns a-blazing. But I didn't want to react emotionally just because I know that adds fuel to the fire. So I sat on my response all day. Like, I didn't reply until hours and hours later. And I just sent a very generic, haha, saw those options on a popular 2023 list too. Just to kind of kill the conversation and not feed into it. Because the other aspect of this that annoyed me was the middle name. I had explicitly said we are going to choose a Korean name, and they just ignored it and provided American middle name options because they didn't like the idea of a Korean name. They couldn't just accept our decision, but it was like they were trying to change our mind. Also, as if Elizabeth would be the selling point on that. Like, because that's my middle name, and that was the other thing. I was like, we don't want to name it any of our names. Like, it's cool if it's for others, if it's like a family heirloom you're passing down. I don't personally, I don't care about being a junior or a second or matchy middle names. That's just not for me. I like the original piece, you know? But anyway, I gave my generic haha response, and then they opened up the passive-aggressive guilt trip of, well, your grandfather passed his middle name down, and I share a middle name with my mom, and this sibling passed down his middle name, and this sibling used his middle name as the first name, yada, yada, yada. And also keep in mind, I don't even know how many grandkids are in the family. So this is not, I know I just said it's an heirloom. But one, not every single kid is like this. Not every single sibling did this. It was kind of just a coincidence. They apparently put a lot of thought into curating this and getting all of the background evidence. But it's definitely not a thing that the entire family is doing that I'm not. So also keep that in mind. But then I was like, okay, this is getting to be too much. It's time to put my foot down and set some clear expectations so this doesn't just blow out of proportion and just get out of hand. Let me simmer this pot down right now at 5 months. And I said, well, there's just gotta be a Korean name in there somewhere, haha. And I know this person, obviously, pretty well, right? It's a significant family member, so I can read their tone and their underlying meaning in texts. Also, the fact that they're having this conversation over text instead of on the phone because they don't want to face the conflict of immediate responses, and they know they have to carefully word their messages and reactions to tiptoe around this. And so I just get this. This is where it gets excellent. This is the response that I got back to there's got to be a Korean name in there somewhere. Because I was getting feisty. I was like, okay, you're fighting so much over a Korean middle name. Now they get a Korean first name. How about that? But this is the response I got. You said Kim was a common Korean name like Smith or Jones. ... That trumps a Korean middle name that few people will even know she has. ... Everyone knows first and last. Unquote. And here, even Daniel doesn't... Daniel's such a Care Bear. He doesn't get into conflicts. He doesn't get mad at anybody. Everyone just does everything great in his mind. He is so pure. And even he was, at this point, he was like, this argument is flawed. If it doesn't matter, then why do they care what the middle name is? Why are they pushing back so hard on this? And that was Daniel's reaction. You know what I mean? He never gives a reaction like that. And so I was just baffled that they're really trying to fight this with the stance that the last name is Korean, and so that's enough identity shaping. And I'm not gonna lie, at this point I was a little more reactive than I should have been. But I'm pregnant, so I think that's a fair excuse. Also, what I said back was true. I do stand by that. But I just fired back with all of Daniel's family will call her by her Korean name, so it does matter, and it will be a huge factor in her culture. And that was enough for this person to kind of back off a bit. And then they asked, what's Daniel's mom's Korean name? And I told them, and they were just like, well, ... And there you go, ... And then I didn't reply. I'm like, this is the end of the conversation. There's no talking to you. And I'm just thinking like, damn, if you're so against a Korean middle name, how are you going to respond when you find out I want her to grow up learning Korean? I'm going to buy her Korean picture books and I'm going to teach her the little that I do know. And I want her grandparents and Daniel's family to speak predominantly Korean when they're around her, so she grows up learning it. And I'm going to teach her how to read and write in Korean as soon as she's learning to read and write. And she's going to have a 100-day birthday celebration, as is the Korean tradition. And she's going to wear the cute little, the itty bitty teeny tiny doll hanbok with the little hat, like the adorable little outfits. And she's going to eat with chopsticks, and she's going to watch Korean cartoons, and she's going to eat Korean food. And I'll fight anybody that tries to tell me otherwise or has anything to say about that. I'm going to do my best to raise her into an adorable little bilingual smarty pants. So, what have I learned? Keep our naming options to ourselves, because people will find a way to ruin and dampen the joy and the experience of picking out names for your first kiddo. Not everyone will be as supportive as you'd like them to be. Also learned that unconscious bias is still very much alive and well in some social bubbles. Additionally, names are way more important to cultural identity than we give them credit for, because I think that shows by the sheer amount of pushback that we got from some of these people. Because if it didn't matter, and if names didn't have any consequences, they wouldn't be trying so hard to convince me not to give my kid a foreign name. Also, just a friendly reminder. If someone entrusts you with their future kiddos' names, or honestly their newborn kids' names, just smile and say, wow, cute. Even if you don't mean it. They like it for a reason. Just let them be happy with what they've chosen. It's not hurting anyone. Just let them be. And I even told my sister, because, obviously she's amazing and she's always definitions, supportive. And she is always there for me. But I gave her a heads up and I'm like, hey, I'm very sensitive on this topic right now. When I tell you the names we're thinking of, even if you're like, ooh, but that's a really common whatever name, or I know 12 people named that, even though you only know one person named that name, or oh, I don't think it really flows with the middle name. I already told her, I'm like, just don't tell me. Just say, wow, so cute. Because I don't want to go through that feeling again, honestly. I want someone to say, wow, cute. And that's it. Unless you have something super pressing that you just like, hey, did you consider there is actually a serial killer with this exact name? Something bizarre like that, then sure. But if it's just, I don't like that name, cool, not your kid. It's not your kid. And in the great words of Daniel, if they don't like the names, frick 'em. So I just need to keep that in mind. And here's the thing that I'm kind of struggling with a little bit, is because I know that other people's opinions don't matter. I know if I say, I love this name, we're choosing this name, and if they're like, ew, I know that's not going to change how I feel about the kid's name. I think what really got me was because this was a significant family member. And like I said, it's not just about the names. It's about me trying to share part of this experience of being first pregnancy, naming a kid. I was trying to share that connection and have that experience shared, I guess. And it was not supported. I think that's what I'm really getting caught up on. More so than just, they don't like the names we've chosen. Like I said, this name is foreign and why does it have to be Korean? That is, I think, a secondary underlying red flag that I need to be aware of. Because like I said, I'm not trying to have my child be treated that way. I don't want them to get comments of like, why don't you ever eat with a fork instead of chopsticks? Why do you always have to watch Korean cartoons? Anything like that. Like those subliminal comments that white is better than anything else. that's what I'm trying to avoid, and that's what I'm going to have to be careful with. But I think ultimately I was just really hurt because it was a significant family member making a happy, joyful experience not happy and joyful. And I think that was a sad thing. So that's my story. Hopefully for those of y'all out there, if you are in the same journey as we are, or if you're about to be in the same journey, or if you went through this before, I'm sorry. Hopefully you guys have loving, supporting family members who just think everything you do is great and are very open to your pregnancy journey. Hopefully you do not experience these things because they do suck. And I'll say it again for the people in the back. If someone tells you their baby names, please do not shit on their parade. Please just say, wow, so cute. Because it's, like I said, for us, I don't know. I never thought it was that significant until it was my kid. And it really is. It's like a big deal. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. We take it very personally. Should I? Maybe not. But that doesn't change the fact that I do feel strongly about it and that it is a very personal thing for me. So please just be nice to other people. Be a decent human being. Make good choices. And I'll catch y'all next week. Okay, bye!